Please introduce yourself.
My name is Yevhen Soloviov.
Where are you from?
I was born in the city of Kherson in 1990. After that, until 1999, I lived for 9 years in Kazakhstan, where my father served.
What did your father do in the service?
My father was an aviation equipment engineer. He serviced and prepared airplanes for flights. These were MiG-21, MiG-29, which after the collapse of the Soviet Union were still based on the territory of Kazakhstan.
When you were in Kazakhstan with your father, what did you see? What do you remember? What impressed you? Before
1929, we lived in a closed military garrison. It was a kind of military town where everyone knew each other. In other words, it was absolutely safe. From first grade, I was already going to school by myself. It was a very warm, heartfelt atmosphere. In the summer, I spent most of my vacation with my father at the airfield where he would take me. In general, my parents arranged it so that I would spend one day with my mom and one day with my dad. But I liked being with my dad more because it was a military airfield, flights, the smell of those flights, kerosene burning in the air. Well, it was awesome.
what did you dream about as a child?
At that time, it so happened that my father was an engineer and they had a separate building where they were stationed, where they did their maintenance work. And the pilots had their own area, a different wing, a different location. And not over a fence, but from a bit of a distance, I would watch these pilots as they climbed out of their planes, discussed things among themselves, chatted about something. I watched them, and to me, they were like gods, the ones who lifted these huge planes into the sky with a tremendous roar. I could see just how many people, like ants, were all working so that this one person who was standing there could take off into the sky, complete their training mission, and land. And we dreamed that one day, maybe like everyone else, we could get closer to that higher realm, to those gods.
What did your father teach you? Maybe there's some catchphrase or saying.
The particular phrase I remember most vividly, the one my beloved father always said to me, was that no matter who you ultimately become in this life, if you are truly the very best at what you do, you will undoubtedly be happy. No matter who you choose to be friends with, you can pick your own friends and talk to anyone you want, but you must always make your own decisions. Think about whether you like the consequences that might come from certain actions and then decide whether to do it or not. But do communicate. Be friends with whomever you want. That's it. These are the two phrases I use the most now when I try to explain something to my son.
Do you consider yourself the best at something right now? Have you achieved exactly what your father taught you?
In reality, in aviation, it's very hard to define what the best even means. When we talk about sports, running, track and field, boxing, or football, if you win, if you come in first, if you beat someone, then you're the best. In aviation, it's very difficult. And this boundary, this threshold of being the best, has constantly changed over the time I've been in aviation. I used to think that if someone flies safely, completes all their flights perfectly, we also have our own grading standards, and lands so smoothly that no one in the cabin even notices the landing. That's the best pilot. But after 2022, when the full-scale invasion began, I realized that these criteria for a military pilot are a bit different. Because there are pilots who do all those things I mentioned, but when it comes to carrying out a combat mission assigned to them, they're not quite able to do it. And then there are pilots who you could say fly at a sea level, but when you give them a mission, they go complete it and come back. So it's very hard to determine who is the best here. But I always did everything I possibly could to be the very best. This pervasive shadow of a parade for my father has probably followed me throughout my entire life.
Tell me, when you assign a task to the pilots, have you done that task yourself before? What are your principles?
It's very hard to assign a task that you don't understand how to accomplish yourself. Not just in theory, but in practice as well. So I always try not to do that. And life turned out in such a way that I assign only those tasks that I carry out myself. Sometimes there were even cases when I was told that you can't really do it that way. We're crossing the risk threshold. In such challenging situations, I personally make the firm decision to undertake it myself, and you, my colleagues, simply follow my lead as number two. And after just one such initial attempt, throughout the entire subsequent rotation, for example, the other guys no longer have any lingering questions or concerns about the inherent safety risks involved. If I make a decision, it means I assess those risks and I can do it myself.
Tell us about your military journey, where you started and where you are now.
It's a very interesting military journey. I finished school in 2007 and wanted to become a pilot, which is what I had been working towards my whole life. The choice was a bit difficult because all my childhood I dreamed of flying planes. I played the IL-2 Sturmovik simulator. I watched movies like Top Gun and old war films. I watched all of that and wanted to fly planes. But the situation in the country was such that even before the full-scale invasion, and God, even after the full-scale invasion, when we win, the situation changed, but the army still wasn't given the attention it deserved. Aviation is a very expensive and costly thing, which always requires a lot of funding, and our planes flew very little. The level of training was at its lowest. I know there were years when pilots simply didn't take to the skies at all. And when it was necessary to make decisions, I found out that there were helicopter brigades. Army aviation brigades that take part in international peacekeeping operations. Our world is built in such a way that money tends to win out a bit. And international peacekeeping operations brought huge sums of money into our country's budget. That's why the state allocated funds specifically for training helicopter pilots, so that these pilots would later bring even more money to the country. And they carried out flights. If they were flying missions, then that's exactly what I needed. I decided to become a helicopter pilot myself.
Have you ever had any accidents with helicopters?
If we classify accidents according to Order 256 of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, then there was only one accident involving a helicopter. It was in 2013, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo at the Kompati site during a mission to airdrop troops and cargo, as we had 16 people on board. The elevation of the site was 200. I remember it clearly. I was the pilot navigator, the crew commander. We made the decision, calculated everything. Everything was great, perfect. But there are conditions that simply can't be accounted for. In aviation, there are a lot of factors, and they all affect flight operations. A helicopter actually flies by pushing off the air, if you try to imagine it simply. It's like when we swim in the sea, we push ourselves forward with our hands against the water. In the same way, a helicopter pushes off the air with its blades. And in the mountains in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the air currents, whether they're easterly or updrafts, can just toss you around, lift you up, or drop you down. And during the landing approach, we either burned out or failed to account for this downdraft that suddenly appeared. There was a mountain right in front of us, and we were just thrown around, everyone, including the crew. That mountain, it was a crash. Thank God we all survived. What really helped us was that there had just been a rainy season. The ground was softened and the helicopter just sank in. Instead of sliding off that mountain, it got stuck. So we didn't even fall any further. We just tipped over a little.
Many people who have lived through such extreme moments say that time seems to slow down at that point. Did you experience anything like that, any similar feelings? Can you recall that exact moment when you realized it was all over?
At that time, I had very little experience flying a helicopter. I was the co-pilot. And for a while, everything was happening very quickly, very smoothly. And up to a certain point, I thought everything was going as it should. But when I realized that what was happening, that's when I realized that training in aviation plays a huge role, because in those moments, you only do what you've practiced in advance. There's no time, we're short on time, there's no time to think, you just do what you prepared for ahead of time. Whenever I take part in training pilots, I always say that you have to go through every possible scenario. And during the flight, you shouldn't be thinking about what to do if this or that happens. We just pull out the right answers like cheat sheets, the correct answers from our heads, and do what we're supposed to do. Yes, time really is saved.
Can you vividly recall a specific situation, perhaps a challenging or even painful experience, that truly taught you something profound, and where your beloved Father thoughtfully guided you with his wisdom and unwavering support through those difficult and trying circumstances?
The first thing that came to my mind is just our ordinary walks. When we would go to the store or come back, or when my father parked the car in the garage and we walked home from there, and my father would tell me stories. He would very often tell me stories from his own life. And back then, to me, they were just stories. But when the time came, when he was gone, I realized that this was actually a process of upbringing. He was teaching me what a man should be like. He would tell stories about his friends who made the wrong choices, something related to drugs, about tobacco, alcohol, anything, about making the wrong decisions, about everything. He would tell me about the brigade commander he had, what a pilot he was, what a great pilot he was, that sometimes he would even point out to the aviation technicians where and what the malfunction was. He would fly in, the technicians couldn't find what the malfunction was, but he was so well trained, both theoretically and practically, that he would come over and say, look, it's this, or this most likely. And he would just be right. That was the image of a person, a man as he should be.
Can you vividly recall a specific moment when you were intently watching him, perhaps observing, but he genuinely didn't see you at all? And for you, it was a moment of pride and warmth.
First of all, I remember the times when he would take me with him to the garage. We had a base called Tselin Alvisiv, which needed to be repaired from time to time. And so that I could somehow be involved in it, doing men's work, my father would always take me with him to the garage. And when I saw that he was always maintaining everything himself, changing the oil and doing everything completely, since he was an engineer, he just understood everything. And I was there to hand him things, to open something or to do this or that. And in those moments, whenever I realized there was some kind of malfunction or anything at all, my father would always take care of it. And he would see it through to the end because we understood that he might need to go to work the next day, or we had some plans and we could be delayed. In other words, whatever he started, he always finished it to the end. I even remember a moment when I was playing the IL-2 Sturmovik simulator. I crashed in the game and my grandma was standing behind me and I told her, that's it, turn off the computer. I said, why? Turn it off, you've played enough for today. I said, why? He said, well, that's it, you crashed. You shouldn't get used to the idea that you crash in the game and then just start over with a new one. Life doesn't work that way. That's it, you're not playing anymore today. That's how it was.
Tell me about your family.
My family is quite large. I have a wonderful wife, Katerina, and two sons. They are Yehor and Lev. Also, my family includes my mother, who is still with us, and my sister. My wife's family is also like family to me. Just like with my own family, I have a very good relationship with my mother-in-law, father-in-law, her brother, and most of her relatives.
When you finished your studies, did you become a pilot right away?
When I enrolled at the Kharkiv Air Force University, the first year was all about general subjects, advanced mathematics, physics, law, philosophy. Well, I can't say I found it interesting. At school, I was an average student. I was more into sports. They constantly wrote notes for me so I could have a flexible schedule at school. I went to competitions and training camps, so my studies were just so-so. And my basic knowledge was at the highest level. And the first year was pretty uninteresting. Plus, I was getting used to the army. The barracks really restrict you. There are rules. You have to behave in ways you don't want to. At the same time, you're 18 years old and it's spring outside the fence, girls everywhere. But they're somewhere out there and you don't even see them. You just know they're out there somewhere. But after we had successfully completed our very first introductory flight experience, everything truly changed dramatically and profoundly. I immediately realized that this indeed is the one singular thing that's absolutely worth all of it. All the immense suffering, all the difficult restrictions, and every single sacrifice made along the way. And after my first flight, I called my dad and said, Dad, he was really worried about how it would be for me. Now I understand that it was actually him who led me to aviation, to becoming a pilot. I thought it was my decision, but in reality, he gently guided me toward it. Maybe it's because he wanted to become a pilot himself, but couldn't, and he wanted to fulfill in me what he couldn't achieve. Maybe. I called him. He was very worried about how it would go after my first flight. I said, Dad, if they pay me for this, this is the best job in the world. He said, son, are they really going to pay you for this? They will.
Tell me, what did you feel during that first flight? How can you describe it?
The first full flight, there are a lot of vibrations, noises, you don't understand anything, but the instructor, he has to be not just a professional pilot, but also a psychologist who can reach your soul, explain things to you so that you can open up, both focused and relaxed at the same time. And when we were flying the second half of that circuit, the familiarization flight, he said, look at the people, see how small they are. Look, there's a grandma doing something in her garden. And you look, and they really do look like ants all walking around down there. and you're flying and you realize there's 13 tons in the air and now you can control it. Well, it's just indescribable.
Tell me, are there any moments from your youth that you remember very vividly? That will be the first question. And the second question, what sport did you do?
Actually, the two questions are very much connected because for most of my youth, I did sports, I did boxing, and I had 2 training sessions a day. Morning training, then I went to school, studied a bit more, managed to keep up. Lunch, some rest, then evening training, training camps, competitions. I was constantly traveling somewhere. And in my personal opinion, this had a huge impact on shaping me. Learning to push through pain, through fatigue, to achieve my goals, to understand that if you did something wrong or not as well as you could, you'll just lose at the next competition. And losing in boxing can sometimes be a bit painful and it's unpleasant. And that's how it worked. I had a good coach. When I started, I was overweight. I was kind of chubby. My mom used to feed me a lot. I came in and it was really hard for me. A lot of guys from school joined us. It was really hard for me to keep up with them. There, everyone had to run 6 laps around the stadium. They told me, okay, you just run 2. And it was hard for me. The coach saw that and said, listen, I know what you need to start winning so that you can get better and start winning. Just listen to what I tell you and you'll start winning. And I realized that's how life works. When you work hard, when you do everything you can to reach your goal, everything falls into place so that you eventually achieve it. Maybe not right away, maybe not on the first try, but eventually you will achieve it. So there are no limits in this life that are set in front of you. After that happened, I said that a lot of guys came to the gym at the same time. I was the only one who stayed out of all of them. I no longer had excess weight. I went to competitions. I won. I was part of the Ukrainian national team. Back then, it was still the cadet team. So I competed among the juniors. And this experience had a huge impact on me, shaping my personality as well.
Tell me, how did you use your skills outside the gym? Maybe you worked in something related to your athletic abilities?
Yes, there was such a moment. As I mentioned, in 2007, I finished school and decided to enroll in the Kharkiv Air Force University. But it so happened that the admissions committee was organized in 2 different locations. If you were applying for the ground staff, the engineering regional department, to become an engineer, you had to go to one place. If you wanted to become a pilot, you had to travel and undergo the flight medical commission in other cities. And the letter saying to go to the first place arrived earlier. And I made a mistake there, or maybe it was a mistake at the post office. I didn't arrive at that place. I didn't manage to apply for the pilot program. And I decided that I wouldn't apply for the engineering program because I specifically wanted to be a pilot. I don't want to do that job. I want to be a pilot. So I take a year off. My coach finds me a job that won't interfere with my training or traveling to competitions. I was, you could say, the assistant to the personal security guard of Aravin in Kherson and the Kherson region, Yosif Kochvov. And for a year, I worked very closely.
Tell me, what did you take away from that job?
It was a very interesting experience. A different religion, a different worldview, different rules. It radically changed my relationships. I always saw and heard stories, jokes, when people talked about Jews, about their greed or something else. But when I truly found myself deeply immersed inside all of this, I genuinely realized that we actually have a great deal to learn. When I clearly saw, by direct comparison, when I used to regularly go to our local church with my dear mother, I saw some rather unpleasant examples. And when I was almost every day at the Jewish synagogue and saw how everything was organized there, how they treat each other, how they raise their children, I realized, and this is my conclusion, that it is necessary to teach children and tell them about what you yourself believe in and to be an example in this. That is to tell someone that smoking is bad and you shouldn't do it, but you smoke yourself. Or to say that you need to observe fasts and not drink alcohol, but you yourself do it. This just doesn't work in the world. I saw children who were 4 years old and they truly, sincerely believed. And they followed their own rules. And that was really cool. I wouldn't say they were limited, their horizons were actually broadened. I met a girl a little girl who was 3 years old and she spoke 4 languages. She only started speaking maybe a year or a year and a half ago, and now she already speaks 4 languages and switches between them just like that. And there I was, able to speak Ukrainian and Russian, and knowing that someday I would need to learn English.
They came to the question of language on their own. This is such a painful issue for the whole country right now. What is your attitude toward it?
My personal opinion regarding the language issue is that if we're talking about official events, if we're talking about the service sector, if we're talking about how the military communicates at the front, then language is an idea of an identifier. If we're talking about everyday life, then I can't tie the Russian language to Russia. It's connected because the words have the same roots. But we don't say that Canada, where people speak English and French, doesn't exist as a country, that it doesn't exist. Sometimes when someone addresses me in Russian, I reply in Russian. If they speak to me in English, I answer in English. If they speak to me in Ukrainian, I respond in Ukrainian. Therefore, my personal opinion is that if a person wants to speak Russian in their everyday life, then approaching them and making remarks just in daily situations somewhere, well, that's not right. But if a person cannot speak Ukrainian and works in the service sector or is somewhere on the front line, then problems arise, huge problems. Because, as I said, it's an identifier.
Katya, the love of your life. How did you two meet? How did you feel that it was true love? Tell us about it.
The story of how I met Katerina is actually a very interesting one. Just imagine, it was 2014, the anti-terrorist operation, summer, one of the hottest summers of my life. We were crews usually assigned to a single helicopter. We had a helicopter on which we carried out missions in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. The helicopter, it's standard practice that it needs to be serviced. You can't do that out in the field. You had to return to base. Every 50 flight hours, every 100, every 200 flight hours, a list of maintenance tasks had to be done, which our engineering team would handle. And that's the moment when you can get some rest. You know that your helicopter is currently undergoing maintenance. It's not available right now. The oil, the main rotor has been removed. 1 day, 2 days. Well, you're free. Our unit was based in Chornobyvka near Kherson, 100 kilometers from the sea. At 24 years old, it's an opportunity for me to go to the sea and maybe spend a day or two by the sea. Because we were constantly dealing with transporting the wounded and the dead, I started to look at my life a bit differently. So we just went late in the evening, decided to go after work. We went to the sea. Let's go to the sea, relax. And we went to the sea at night. We had a friend of mine with us who died in 2014, a week after this trip. He died near Sabormohilov. Dmitro Ortsilinka. He went with us. We went to the club, met the girls just in the club. And Katerina sat next to Dmitro. And he was telling something, and he kept telling, and looked at me. He keeps talking, and I notice that she also glances at me from time to time. I realize that they're talking about me. Then the girls go out either to dance or maybe to take care of some of their own things. So I lean over to him and say, Dmitro, what are you talking about? Because I was getting a bit anxious about it. He says, Zhenya, to her, you are now like God. I told her that to her, you are simply God. That probably gave me some confidence. I asked her to dance. In the morning, we had to return to duty, but the next evening, I went back to Zalizny port, to the sea, where Katerina was, where she had come with her friend to relax. And every day, as long as I had this maintenance, I would return to the sea every evening to spend time with her. After that, there was a rotation in the anti-terrorist operation. After that, they gave me a little rest, a week. I went to Kropivnitsky from there, that's where I'm from. I arrive at her parents' place and tell them that I'm taking Katerina with me. If she doesn't like something, I'll bring her back. If something goes wrong, everything will be fine. Katerina goes with me to Kherson, and in half a year, we get married.
True love?
It was true love, truly and undeniably, and definitely at first sight.
What is love, Yevhen? Describe this feeling. What is it like?
What is love? For me, that's not even a question, because personally, the highest form of love for me is a mother's love for her child. It's when your own feelings, your own comfort, your ambitions, your thoughts don't matter to you. First and foremost, you think about the object of your love. If you understand that it will be better for your loved one, then you will do everything to make it so. It's not about needing them to always be by your side, here, or having to control them, watch over them, or go everywhere together. You look for every way to do something good for them. And in my love for my wife, I feel the same way. She goes, right now we're in such a difficult situation with the world. And I tell her, go visit your mom for a bit, stay there for a week, because we need to wait it out just for now until we get things done. And she asks, do you want us to be together or do you not want that? I say, I want you and the kids to be comfortable, for you to be in comfort. I always want them to be safe and for this war to affect them as little as possible.
So your first experience of combat, describe it.
You can divide questions about combat into 3 stages. Because I took part in international peacekeeping operations where there was a civil war, participated in the anti-terrorist operation and in the full-scale invasion. Since February 24th, everything changed drastically. When I first arrived in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, crossed the border between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, I saw destroyed houses, bridges, total devastation, poverty. Somewhere a mortar would fire, somewhere a unit was operating. Our guys were flying overhead. We arrived, we replaced one of the units. And then it was 2013. MR23 is an illegal armed group. They tried to seize exactly the place where our camp was located. And I'm watching from the camp as our pair of Mi-24s, this was my first day at Conquers, approach the forest, engage, deliver fire strikes on the enemy, finish shooting, land, refuel, and another pair takes off. And there was constant fighting like that. A mortar hits the neighboring camp. I thought, my God, when I arrived, it felt like I was in Call of Duty, a game I used to play. This was for real, Call of Duty. First of all, there's always fear when you're unprepared and find yourself in conditions you're not used to. A rush of adrenaline. In 2014, there was a moment that I remember very clearly. The first time I flew out on a mission from the main airbase, I took off, and just a few days later, before that, our helicopter had been fired upon. The flight engineer died, a bullet hit his neck, and they couldn't stop the bleeding. 3 days later, we said our goodbyes to him, and I flew my first rotation into the combat zone. And we started up the engines, and then a whole flock of crows just flies by. On the right side where I was sitting there. Volyovichok was the navigator in the right seat. To the right, across the sky, to the left. And there were so many of these crows that they blocked out the sun. And I felt so uneasy. I was overcome by this strange, unknown feeling. And we believe, all people in aviation believe in signs, in some kind of superstitions. And this flock of crows flying by, I look at it and get goosebumps. Then there were a lot of missions to carry out. And I wouldn't say the risk level was extremely high compared to the full-scale invasion, but there was still a lot. We saw blood, so many dead and wounded. That's the main part of our job. It was to evacuate the wounded from the battlefield, to deliver them to hospitals, to field hospitals, and from field hospitals to big cities, Dnipro, Lviv, anywhere. A full-scale invasion is a completely different kind of work. We were saving fewer lives and carrying out more fire missions. The first 3 days of the full-scale invasion, it was pure adrenaline. I didn't want to eat, sleep, or talk to anyone. I didn't want anything at all. We just carried out the tasks. They came in instantly. It could be 2 o'clock in the morning. A task comes in, a column is moving, something needs to be done. We have to deploy paratroopers. It was 4 in the morning. Drones had passed somewhere. We needed to get out from under the strikes, change our position. Pure adrenaline. And I realized during the first week, the first 2 weeks, the Russians made a mistake. They were moving in columns, simply in undeployed combat formations, without proper air defense cover. They had air defense units in their columns, but they just weren't working. And we destroyed them. While they were moving along those roads, we destroyed those columns. But I understood one thing: this wouldn't last forever. They would adapt. And when they did adapt in the conditions we were working in, flying those helicopters, using that method of attack, it would be very easy to take us out. Something would have to change. But yes, as long as we can carry out the mission with maximum efficiency, and that means Firing from horizontal flight, that is, we see, we aim, we search, we deliver firepower, we destroy, we see the results ourselves, and then we return. And these losses began, so we adjusted our tactics a bit, deployment.
Do those people come back to your memory? The killed, the wounded, the ones you've seen many times?
As for the people who are etched in my memory, I remember one in particular, a wounded infantryman we were transporting. His thigh was shattered, probably by some shrapnel. This was back in 2014. And the whole ride, he was worried that he would get blood all over our cabin. He kept asking for rags, napkins, for us to give him wipes, rags, bandages, give me, give me, give me. We thought maybe there was some kind of bleeding affecting the onboard equipment, so we handed him everything we could. And then, well, it turned out it was just a little bit of everything. And he says, I have a lot of blood, I don't want to get everything here all messy. And we were like, fine, let him sit and make a mess, whatever, let him sit. The man just had a broken thigh. He's not worried about his leg, not about his future. He's worried about not making a mess in the helicopter we flew in to get him.
What do you think is the greatest loss in this war, in your opinion?
Regarding losses, every time we lose people with whom we were just completing missions the day before, yesterday, last month, or even yesterday, it's a huge, I can't single out anyone in particular, but I remember them all the time. Volodymyr Askliara, a flight engineer who died defending Kyiv. He left behind a wonderful wife and daughter who live in Kyiv. We were together in Congo, and when he returned, he wanted to buy himself the car he had always dreamed of. And we constantly talked about it. We worked out together, went running together, ran together. We went to the gym together in our free time, whenever we had it. He would say, I really want to buy it, but it's so much money, I don't know, maybe my family, maybe I should spend it on something else, but still. And I told him, Volodya, none of us knows how long we will live. Well, if you want it, what does your wife say? His wife says, if that's what you want, buy it. I'm for it. I'm for any decision you make if that's what you want. I said, you see, go ahead and do it. He bought it. He drove it, enjoyed it for a few months before the full-scale invasion began. And then I had a chance to talk to him. He said, I just drive. I enjoy it. I did what I wanted. Then in the first month of the full-scale invasion, on March 8th, he was killed. Now his wife drives that car. And sometimes I often talk to the stars. I often talk to my father or to people I truly miss. And I ask them questions because I know that this particular person could answer my question, since he always did. And maybe I'm answering myself, maybe I'm imagining how that person would respond. I know what advice he would give me in this situation, and it makes things easier for me. I talk and say, Volodya, you see, you did exactly what you wanted. You truly enjoyed what you wanted. That's how it is.
Now we're getting a bit closer to your most difficult operations. When the war started, how did you find out about the beginning of the war, and what was the plan if the war broke out? What did you and Katya agree on?
I'll start by answering what Katerina and I agreed on. Katerina always asked me. I don't really like to talk about everything that concerns my work and my wife. She's very curious about everything. They try to connect everything that's unconnected to find out everything. And she's a very emotional person. When there's some kind of injustice somewhere or something isn't the way it should be, she gets very upset about it, and I don't like that. In general, I don't like it when my wife or my family worries about something. I try to handle these issues myself, but if I can't solve them because I'm physically not there, then they will take care of it. And she always asked, what should I do? What should I do? What should I do? Everyone keeps saying. I said, if it becomes necessary, I'll tell you, you'll pack your things and leave. You'll go to your mother, and then I'll tell you where to go next. That's it. That's how my mother lived in Kropivnitsky, my mom. And then the next stage is when I find out that it's starting. The military, we had nothing, right? That is, suddenly we were unprepared. Different scenarios had been worked out. We had various commands, signals by which we were supposed to do something. This could be assembly, withdrawal from under attack, or carrying out other tasks. Immediate support for the actions of the first echelon brigades, supporting our ground forces. At that time, I was serving as the deputy commander of a helicopter squadron and as the squadron commander. Most of the squadron was stationed on the defense of Kyiv. Our helicopters had already been deployed in the Kyiv region in advance. They were already preparing to defend Kyiv. The squadron commander was there at the time. At that time, I was performing his duties, and I receive a signal that the assembly is under attack. I realize that it has begun. And at that moment, while I'm heading to the command post to clarify the mission to set for the next task, I'm gathering personnel from the candidates, and at the same time, two thoughts are running through my mind. The first is accomplishing the mission, organizing the distribution of weapons, evacuation under fire, planning and carrying out these tasks. And the second is ensuring the safety of my family. That is, you give your wife instructions on what to do, how to get the car, pack things, where to go, whether the car is fueled or not, what to take for yourself, what not to take. I'm used to controlling everything. Sometimes maybe that's all there is to it. Because of aviation, the crew commander is responsible for everything during the flight. Anyone can make a mistake. The navigator might miscalculate, the flight engineer might make an error, but the commander is responsible for everything because he didn't supervise properly and he's the one who's accountable for it. And that leaves a certain mark. I'm used to controlling everything, even if I'm not the one who has to do it, but if it might affect me. And so I'm on the phone, call after call, while I'm on the move. And then the first rocket attacks begin while the helicopter is being prepared for evacuation. We're in the bomb shelter. I step out of the shelter to call my wife, to find out where she is, to give her directions, to tell her how to drive, because the GPS isn't working. Just like that. That was the beginning.
Could you have imagined, when you were studying, did you ever think you'd take part in a war?
Could I have imagined that I would take part in a war? We had a teacher for a subject like that. History of war. And once he said this phrase, he said, "You're all sitting here now studying this subject. Some of you are interested, some less so. But remember, every generation will have its own war. And for your generation, if you think that right now, even if you're just in the army, just doing training and nothing else, you will still live through your own war. Some already have. Afghanistan, before that, it was the Great Patriotic War. Every generation will experience its own war. And for your generation, this burden will fall on your shoulders as well. When I was carrying out missions in the Donetsk region during the anti-terrorist operation, I kept thinking about that instructor, and I realized he was actually right. And when in 2015 there was a sort of truce, things became more or less calmer, I thought that the active phase of the war in my life was over. That's it. But life decided otherwise.
We've come to the most significant operation in your life, if we can classify it that way. How close were you to death?
Sometimes when they give you a task, or sometimes it happens that they call or used to call, and they say, "There's a mission, a hero's mission," they say. "There's a hero's mission." I say, "No, I don't like it, I don't like it." "Well, it's needed, we're gathering the team. There's a mission." And so when I first learned about the need for help and about what had to be done, a flight into besieged Mariupol under those conditions, where it had to be carried out as a professional, as a pilot, I decided for myself that it was impossible. That it's simply, if you do the calculations for the flight through. As for suppressing enemy air defense systems, I understand that no one will be able to do that at such depth. Destroying the enemy in general, we won't be able to influence them at such depth to destroy all of them at once or put them out of action. We won't be able to do anything. I understood that, as we say, it's like you've drawn a one-way ticket. That's it. In the best case scenario, you'll help the guys and deliver the cargo there. And the first task, when it was already assigned to me, I won't say I actually agreed to it right away. I said that I'm either that stupid or that brave to pull this off. But we're soldiers. The commander hung up the phone. The brigade commander asked what was going on. I said, "They hung up on me." He calls back and says, "Listen, it's a combat order." He orders, "Do it." And he even starts listing the points of the combat order. And failure to carry out a combat order is, first of all, criminal liability. Secondly, probably. It's not psychological. It's simply that I understand that if I refuse now, they'll just take me away, and then someone else will be brought in to take my place, and he will end up carrying out the exact same task. And then either sitting behind bars or in the infantry to find out that someone died, and in some way you're involved in that. Well, and I couldn't live with that for the rest of my life. That's why we started planning the execution of this operation. Because if you just look at it from the outside, being alive but in prison is a bit easier than just dying. But we decided to go through with it anyway. We planned it based on the information we had, planned how we could actually do it. Someone even suggested the idea of flying in from the DNR side so that everyone there would be completely stunned by the sight of a helicopter. And while they're still in shock, we'd arrive. But when we contacted the Azov headquarters and suggested that we wanted to do it this way, they said, I don't remember exactly who I spoke with. It was someone from Azov's command. But they said, guys, is this really your idea that you're planning to fly in here? But that's the worst option. How do you plan to do it? After that, we made a plan, but we didn't have enough information. We lacked information about the presence of troops, about their locations. We didn't have satellite images. We didn't have prior reconnaissance, follow-up reconnaissance, or various timeframes in this region with two special groups to map out this route. We just mapped it out the way we thought it could be done. And it was unsuccessful. We ran into the line of contact about 10 to 15 kilometers after the ribbon, as they say, and stumbled upon enemy positions. There was some small arms fire, the helicopter was slightly damaged, but we continued to carry out the mission. Then on our way back, we got a call saying that fighter jets were chasing us. We made several emergency landings. We roughed up the swamp a bit, the helicopters returned, and on the way back, I even hit a bird with my helicopter. And that's it. We came back and reported that the mission was not accomplished. That's how it was. And everything went quiet. Everything went quiet. The mission was not assigned again. That was the task. I thought it was because the next day we suffered quite a lot of losses among the helicopters. It was exactly when Volodymyr Sklya, whom I mentioned earlier, was killed. I thought that we had already lost enough helicopters. Maybe they changed their minds, that it wouldn't happen. And some time passes, about 2 weeks. I find out that the main intelligence directorate, together with the Army Aviation Command, had already planned an operation. Not just a task assigned, but a planned operation. The resources they involved in this whole operation were enough to chart exactly the right route and crew. The crew completed the mission and returned back. And this story about the first flight is probably a movie script, because the crew commander, Mykola, is in Mariupol, surrounded, and his wife is a nurse there. And he agrees to fly to Mariupol if he is given the chance to evacuate his wife from the besieged city. He completes the flight and picks up his wife, and they return home. This is real, a movie. This is real, a movie. And that's not where it ends. We understand that if it was done once, then another task will be set. Then we find out it was all very secretive. We learned that when the guys came back, it seemed like someone had flown again, and they came back. We understand that, yes, there will be more now. The fifth flight, no, the fourth flight, this one is my godfather's. Yehor's godfather is flying. When I find out that they were given a mission, I try to contact him, but there's no access anymore. I already understand that he's flying, he's coming back, and then the fifth flight. Now the mission is assigned to us. That's how it was.
How did it happen?
How was the task assigned? The task was assigned in a very interesting way. Very, perhaps not the right way, but very covertly. Why? During the day, we completed a mission to deliver fire damage to the enemy. Everything is going as planned, the sun is setting. When the sun sets, usually, ground troops and activity decrease. Why? Because there aren't enough night vision goggles and devices for everyone over there. And so combat activity simply decreases. We understand that we can relax a little. And then I'm given a task. I need to fly to another, far from the front, towards Western Ukraine, to pick up some cargo and deliver it to another location. At night, I fly out and pick up the cargo. The weather wasn't very good for flying. At night, there was fog, precipitation, even some snow. There was a lot of snow. I arrive at the airfield where I need to complete this task. I realize it's already 1 in the morning. According to military regulations, I should be resting because the time allotted for my mission has already run out. And now I need to refuel the helicopter and head back. I say, okay, quickly refuel and we'll take off. They say, no, you need to go upstairs and get some kind of assignment. I say, we don't have any time left, some assignment. No, we're leaving. Our task is to get back. No, go upstairs. We go upstairs. I see 3 more crews. They're sitting there looking at each other, all gathered in one place. And everyone understands that some kind of task is about to come up. They gathered everyone, all the night crews, meaning those prepared for night vision operations. Everyone arrived at night. And something's going to happen, something interesting. We're given the task, loading at 3 in the morning, take off at 4. We have about 2 hours to prepare. But the operation was planned so thoroughly that we were given the route, we were given the results of reconnaissance images. A lot of measures were taken to ensure the operation would be successful. But we understand that with each time, the ring of air defense just gets tighter. They place them very close to each other because they realize that helicopters are breaking through to such a depth that it should be impossible, but somehow they manage to do it. So we'll somehow manage to do it too. And they don't just sit around, they take measures to make it happen. We look at the situation right in the landing zone, in the area where we touch down. We're in the strike zone of 3 anti-aircraft missile systems, not just 1, but 3. What's their reaction time? 5 seconds. That is, it detects the launch of the first missile within 5 seconds. It can simultaneously track 4 targets, and there are exactly 4 of us flying. So each one can fire at each helicopter at the same time. Well, we start getting ready. Then when I realized that I was already prepared for the flight, I was thinking whether I should write something to my last wife. And I realized that if I don't write something and she's not asleep, there will just be a commotion. There will be a total mess right now. She's with Yehor. They're in a safe place there. She's about to start calling. I've already said she's very emotional. That's how she is. I thought maybe I should write to my friend so that if anything happens, he could pass something on to them. But then I thought, no, I'll come back and say whatever I truly want to her myself, directly and without hesitation. I then started diligently reading various Telegram channels, meticulously following the detailed reports about what those truly monstrous invaders were doing on our sacred territory, committing unspeakable acts. I did this specifically to motivate myself even more deeply, to allow myself to get angrier, to fuel my resolve so I could effectively and bravely carry out these crucial and dangerous flights, fulfilling my duty with unwavering determination. They loaded us up with a huge amount. Weapons, communication equipment, and there were also people. The helicopter was overloaded as much as it possibly could be. And to reduce the weight a bit, they took off the missiles. So we had no weapons at all. We couldn't fire back, nothing. And that's what I regretted, because on the way back, we ran into someone we could have hit at the same time if we had the means. That's how it was. Then takeoff. Maybe it's the pilot training, maybe it's just the result of experience. But when you get into the helicopter, when the helicopter starts up, you let go of all your problems. You don't think about anything else except completing the mission. And when we were already seated, when we started up, it was like, phew, and you just carry out the flight, you do the job you have to do. That's how it was.
What struck you when you entered enemy territory? What was it like? What were those first impressions?
While we were flying there, we were just enjoying the view. As I already mentioned, the weather that day was very unfavorable for flying with night vision goggles. Those power lines kept appearing right in front of our eyes. I was leading, flying the first helicopter out of 4, so everyone was watching me. If I ran into something, I'd show them what not to do, or if I flew over something, they'd understand there was an obstacle to avoid. I remember flying in there, looking, and my navigation device was showing the estimated landing time, because we knew we were expected. At a certain time, a group was supposed to arrive to pick up the cargo and bring the wounded to be evacuated. I was checking just to see if the calculation was correct. I look and realize there are 30 minutes left until landing. And the thought crosses your mind, maybe these are the last 30 minutes of your life. And you start thinking whether you did everything right, whether you managed to teach your little son everything you could in that time, the way my father taught me. Did I say everything I needed to? Did I leave enough for my wife so she could get by for a while, survive this war, survive in these wartime conditions? And then right, stop, focus. There's a task, a power line. You need to fly around it, go through here, and you start concentrating. Those thoughts fade away. You step outside yourself. During the approach to the landing site, it was very difficult. There were so many cranes, guy wires. It was necessary. Like in Red Bull, we flew helicopters between the cranes. Yes, it's dangerous even in normal life. Now I'm responsible for flight safety, and what we did violated every requirement in the regulations, the way we carried out that approach. But I saw a city that was just shrouded in smoke, just smoke, as they say, the fog of war. It was simply a city under constant bombardment, under artillery fire, under mortar shelling. I saw a city engulfed in smoke.
What were your impressions when you finally made it there? And how did you make your way back?
When we landed and started unloading the cargo, I realized that we had succeeded, because simply delivering medicine, ammunition, and reinforcements to the guys is incredibly important, because we understood that the guys there had absolutely no medicine, no penicillin, nothing, no antibiotics to help them cope. We knew that the guys were dying from simply festering wounds because they had no way to get medical help. That's it. I realized that we had done it. We did a lot. We delivered to the guys what they needed. And there was this feeling of euphoria at that moment, that you did it, that you accomplished something huge. And then you start thinking about going back. And I think if I made it there and back, now I'll just lay this wheel so low to the ground. Right now, I'm sitting in the strike zone of 3 rocket systems, loading ammunition and medical supplies for the guys in their rear, everything they need. I think I'll definitely make it back. Of the guys we were loading up, there was a lot of hustle and bustle, and honestly, I didn't see anyone. I really didn't see anyone. I was looking around to make sure there weren't any shellings, because we were in a surrounded area. It wasn't very big, and we knew that the landing zones were targeted by artillery, so we kept changing them because the enemy knew where we were landing. We just shifted the spots a bit each time. And we knew that every time after takeoff, the landing zones would be shelled. Sometimes, even before the mission, during the day, they would shell and adjust their fire, just waiting and watching to make sure no one did anything reckless there. Then we agreed to go in pairs. We flew in 4 helicopters, 2 pairs. The first 2 helicopters, me and Yuri Timas was the commander of the second helicopter. As soon as we're ready, the first 2 of us take off. We don't wait for all 4, because there's a risk of being hit by MLRS and everything else. He reported that he was ready. We took off. We flew along the vast expansive sea, and as soon as we truly reached the sandy shore, I just felt this sudden, powerful kind of jolt. A ring? It was a distinct, forceful kick right under the very tail of the entire helicopter. There was a powerful explosion on the left side, loss of rotor speed, the helicopter starts to fall apart, and at first you're just trying not to crash. And at that moment, you realize there's also a whole swarm of bees coming from the right side. Tracers are flying right past the helicopter, and now you're not just falling, you have to maneuver as well. You start maneuvering, trying to get out of this ambush. In the situation we've gotten into, I start calling out to Yuri, who's flying behind me, but he doesn't respond. I keep calling out to him, but he doesn't answer. Then I realize that the 3rd and 4th helicopters are going to be flying behind us. And to make sure they don't get caught in the same trap, I call out to the 3rd and 4th. They respond, saying they were flying and saw it themselves. They saw all the smoke, all the gunfire. They started to maneuver around it, and I asked them to keep an eye out. Maybe they would spot Yura somewhere. And the return flight on just 1 engine, that was something else, especially over occupied territory. You have to make a decision. Either the helicopter is about to fall apart right now, and you need to land somewhere, sit down, take a look, check everything over. We didn't have the valuable onboard equipment responsible for the technical side of things. Because I had left it at the departure airfield, he was a bit upset with me, but I understood that the work he was doing was extremely important. But I'll take responsibility, share it with the pilot navigator, but then no one will have to explain to his wife and mother that a tragedy happened. And we left him, and we had to decide whether to continue the flight or to land. We kept asking Yura where the third and fourth were, and if everything was all right with them. They replied that everything was fine. The helicopter kept trying to fall. 5 minutes later, we encounter another column of enemy vehicles. We try to maneuver away from them on one engine. It's very hard to do because the helicopter is it's flying at parameters where I'm being told it's about to crash. That's how you could put it, at parameters where I was always told and taught that that's when it would fall. If the rotor speed drops that low, it's no longer flying, it's no longer controllable. But I see that it's flying, it's maneuvering, it can. In aviation, there's never a case where a single factor decides everything. It's the combination of everything that somehow contributes to a particular situation. And in that situation, this combination, the crew's training, the aviation equipment, the helicopter itself, simply made it possible to do this. Because no matter who was there, even if it were Gagarin himself in that helicopter, if the helicopter had only one engine, it would have just started to fall apart and no one could have done anything. That's why it's the combination of factors, yes. Came together so that we could simply avoid landing with these wounded guys on occupied territory and then having to run through the forests with them somewhere. We didn't know their health condition. I knew that we were supposed to load the most seriously wounded. But what could we do with them on occupied territory? Leave them behind and escape yourself, or you can't get far with them. That's why we decided to continue. We continued the flight. The helicopter crew was allowed. Fomov was allowed. We turned back and brought the guys back.
Can this be classified as a miracle in war?
It's a miracle in my life. That's how it was.
Do you believe in miracles? Do you believe in God?
I can't associate myself with any religion because when I was little, my mother's grandmother used to take me to church and tell me stories. I've seen a lot of good, a lot of bad, and I've been disappointed by some things. Then there was this story when I worked with a rabbi, I realized that they believe a bit differently, but they do the right things and they live by the right rules. And I asked myself the question, if I believe in one God, or if we all believe in the same one, but I follow one set of rules and they follow another, then who will go to heaven? Will I get there or will they? Or will we all go together? I answered myself that God is one. It's just that the approaches to him are different. If you are a true person and you do the right things, you don't harm anyone, you don't offend the weak, then God sees this and you will be where you are meant to be. That's how it is. Instead of turning to God in difficult situations, sometimes I talk to him, but most of the time I talk to my Father. When I look up at the beautiful stars, I truly believe that my beloved Father sees me, watching over me from above. In the last period of his life, when he died from heart disease, he would call me all the time, but he never told me anything about his health condition. It was 2014 during the anti-terrorist operation. He was very worried that I was there carrying out combat missions in eastern Ukraine. And every time he called, he would end the conversation by saying, Tilo, son, I'm proud of you. He was you could certainly say, a stern and unyielding person, very strict in his ways. And he raised me properly, instilling good values, but there was, unfortunately, very little intimacy or genuine tenderness in our relationship. That just wasn't like him, but in this last period, he probably felt that he didn't have much time left. And in every conversation, he would say, son, I love you, I'm proud of you, I'm proud of you. And when I talk to him now, I sincerely hope that he is still very proud of me and all that I have accomplished.
You are a hero of Ukraine. For what did you receive the title Hero of Ukraine? And what is it like to be a hero of Ukraine, de jure and de facto?
How did I receive it? I received it thanks to fulfilling the tasks that were assigned to me. If those tasks had been given to someone else, they would have managed and completed them too. Maybe they would also have become a hero of Ukraine. It simply says in the order that it was for fulfilling the tasks. For special achievements before the motherland, if I'm not mistaken, I received it for special achievements. De jure. It's an honorary title. It gives you status. It gives you certain privileges. Our bureaucratic system is set up in such a way that you can't use half of the benefits because in the documents, it still lists heroes of the Soviet Union and the USSR. And they say, well, you're a hero of Ukraine, but the law here is written about heroes of the USSR. Or they say, well, there are some benefits. In reality, you feel that The work you do, that your unit, your brigade, your branch of service, Army Aviation does, is being recognized at the highest level. This is not just my achievement. I've said before that in aviation, one person, one helicopter can't accomplish anything alone. Only the collective, the system can. And I always say during flights, especially in tough situations, I provoke and encourage the crew saying, I can't do it alone. I can't pull this off by myself. We all need to come together and do it. Only together can we accomplish this. I can't do it alone, so please help me out. And receiving the prestigious title of Hero of Ukraine started with the significant fact that once a dedicated flight instructor trained me personally. Taught me how to fly, how to carry out missions, set the tasks correctly, provided the necessary support, completed the mission, delivered fire strikes, suppressed air defenses, created a diversionary corridor in another location where we weren't supposed to fly, and all these guys who were carrying out their own tasks, they all did everything so that in the end I could arrive and complete this mission. But that's not the end of the story, because I didn't drop people off there just for them to be there. I dropped off the guys who got out with their rifles, joined the fight for Mariupol, and started simply holding back the enemy, drawing enormous enemy forces onto themselves, which in the end allowed Kiev, Sumy, and Chernihiv regions to be liberated and later created the conditions for Kharkiv. And this isn't the end of the story. This could go on endlessly. We are all connected to each other. Everyone is connected.
Were there any funny stories related to holding the title of Hero of Ukraine?
Sometimes my son, he is 8 years old, the older one, Yegor, I am raising him, and I tell him exactly how things should be done. Nobody likes it when they're told what to do or taught how to do something. I was exactly the same. And when I say, you need to do it this way, he says, no, I don't want to do it like that. It should be this way. Go ask your mom, Mom. Yes, that's how it should be done. Go ask your grandma, ask her. That's how it should be. Go ask that person too. And he comes up and says, they all agree just because you're a hero of Ukraine? Not because that's how it should be. They only agree because you're a hero of Ukraine. That's one thing. And the second thing I remember was during a rotation, I was resting and at the same time dealing with the paperwork for benefits. And for that, you need to gather these documents, take this Hero of Ukraine folder and carry the documents with you. So I went to the Administrative Services Center, did what I needed to do, came back, and there was the star lying there, a small star, the Order of the Hero of Ukraine. It was lying there, and my mother-in-law asked, why do you take it with you? I said that I always take it with me. She asked, why? I said, well, if someone stops me somewhere or asks something, I just show them the Hero of Ukraine certificate once. And generally, I walk around with it, always wear it, so people know it's a status after all. She tells everyone that, believing it completely. Maybe some funny stories.
Tell me, what is leadership in war? What kind of leader are you?
Leadership in war it's extremely important, as the full-scale invasion has shown. Because under stress, even a trained person, not everyone is ready to lead people and risk their own life. These are qualities that are probably developed throughout one's entire life. Not only in the army, not only during preparation for combat missions. These are qualities that have disappeared. One person may already possess them, having been formed, while another does not. For me, it's the ability to explain a task clearly and being ready to carry it out yourself. As we've already discussed, it's impossible to assign a task that you yourself can't imagine how to accomplish. If in the army you give the order, do this, they ask, how? What when you say, I said do it? It will be done exactly as you assigned it. The way you set the task is exactly how it will be done. A leader is someone who encourages, who leads by example, who motivates the personnel. Because in my military career, I've encountered all kinds of commanders. There's an example where a task comes in, some not so great task, and the tasks are assigned. The guys are gathered, and someone says, guys, some idiot called. He says, we have to do this stupid task. This and that, such and such. Well, it's all stupid. And the attitude toward the task, first of all, is just to survive and do something so that the idiot doesn't assign more stupid tasks. But when you're given a stupid task, yet you understand its strategic importance, and you can explain why it's being done and what can ultimately be achieved, because we often don't see the whole picture. People often ask me when the war will end, or they tell me, I have a friend who's at the front and he says such and such will happen. I ask, and who is he? He's a rifleman. That's really something there. Being a rifleman is extremely important work, but a rifleman knows only the amount of information he's given, the sector to fire at from here and from there. He doesn't possess information at the strategic or operational levels. It's very important when assigning tactical tasks to convey to people their operational necessity or strategic significance, what the outcome will be, how in the future our children will be able to do something, and how to find the cause and effect relationship, how this will help us achieve victory.
In your opinion, how will the war end?
Definitely, it will end in victory. The only thing is to truly answer the profound question of what victory genuinely means. For me, it's all those precious lives that were so bravely given, the courageous guys who selflessly gave their lives, who profoundly sacrificed their health and well-being, who are left completely without them, without the entire future they had originally imagined for themselves, so that it wasn't all for absolutely nothing, so that it would truly be a free, sovereign, and independent Ukraine that will develop and flourish, where attitudes toward everything will undoubtedly change quite a bit, so that we don't ever have things like temporary interim positions, even within the armed forces and the army itself. In the leadership apparatus, everywhere a person comes, they know they've been appointed for 3 years. And it's just about what you can do in those 3 years. First, in the army, so you don't get reprimanded or scolded. And second, so that there are some opportunities and some kind of benefit. So that people understand that you can fulfill your duties and do good at the same time. Everyone will benefit from it. You'll be driving on good roads. You'll be carrying out a combat mission. You'll save your comrades. You'll save the guys. In other words, we're all connected.
Tell me, how has the war changed you personally in your life? And also tell me more.
Back in 2014, I started to change my perspective on material values a bit. And when I saw we were transporting fallen and wounded guys, I realized that you need to invest not in things, but in emotions. The most important thing is emotions because we don't know what tomorrow will bring. And when tomorrow eventually comes, and it turns out to be the absolute final deadline in our precious lives, we most certainly won't be able to take back or reclaim any of those numerous material possessions we have accumulated. For the most part, I honestly say that the war itself hasn't really changed me all that much. But my dear wife, she often says that I've become a little bit rougher, perhaps a bit more strict, and certainly a bit more openly emotional. Before the war, I was generally much calmer and more composed. But I always tell her that we are indeed a couple, a true partnership, and we constantly learn valuable things from each other. I, for instance, learn a certain impulsiveness and spontaneity from her, and she, in turn, learns a valuable bit of prudence and careful consideration from me. Sometimes when she talks to her wife, to her son, to Ihor, she explains something to him, and I hear that she says it in my words. And I say, "Oh, you see, we teach each other. I taught you that." She says, "No, I knew that myself. That's how it is."
Tell me, have you ever had to do something that went against your principles?
My principles? Probably not. I can't recall anything. Maybe we're in the process now. If I remember something, I'll let you know. I'm not a saint at all, but I can't remember anything like that. Actually, regarding my father, I just remembered he always told me that a man should only promise what he can do. If you can't do it, don't promise. Say that you'll try, that you'll do your best, but don't make promises. And basically, these are the things that form the foundation of it all.
What action did you lack the courage to take?
I refused to make the decision to fly to the besieged Mariupol on the first attempt. Sometimes to say to my wife right away that I was wrong about something, that I overreacted or said something in the heat of the moment or did something. I don't have enough courage, sometimes in front of my subordinates, to admit in some theoretical matter that I was a bit wrong about this. I admit that I was wrong, but I try to do it in a certain way. I was wrong, but if you look at it from another perspective, maybe if it had been like that, I do this myself, I reproach myself a bit for it. We are human, that's probably just how we're made.
What was the hardest decision you've ever made in your life?
About your decisions. I honestly cannot single out just one particular decision that was truly the hardest or the most challenging to make throughout my entire career. Perhaps it was sending my wife abroad at the initial stage of the war and realizing that there might not even be a chance to see them, even when you get a little rest.
What is the happiest day of your life?
I was present at the wonderful birth of my very first son, Yehor, and I remember that moment when the doctors delivered him. They wiped him down. I looked at him. He was a little blue, his head a bit flattened, as it should be. I counted his fingers like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I realized that everything was fine: 2 arms, 2 legs. And after that, it was just like a light switched on in my life. Everything just became brighter for me, and such euphoria appeared and just tears of joy. I realized that from that moment, the world just turned upside down. There's my entire life before the momentous birth of my beloved child, and then there's my life after that truly transformative event. And now, every single day when I finally come home from work, my wonderful wife lovingly meets me at the door with our precious little Levik. He is so incredibly well, he's truly very sweet and utterly charming. He's always smiling brightly, always reaching out his tiny hands, and absolutely everything in this wide, fascinating world genuinely interests him. I often come home feeling quite sad, incredibly tired, and very deeply preoccupied with many thoughts and concerns. And he looks and he only sees me and he smiles and starts waving his little hands. That's it, I just melt. And that's truly the best feeling imaginable. Everything, absolutely everything I do is dedicated to ensuring a brighter future for my beloved children, my cherished family, all the wonderful people I know, my dearest loved ones, and indeed my entire country. And that's precisely why I commit myself to this, so that they can genuinely smile, truly enjoy their lives, and experience profound happiness. And it's all good. When he is truly in my loving arms, he is genuinely happy. He always smiles. And my dear wife, that is absolutely the most wonderful thing one could ever hope to see.
What do you plan to do after the war?
I plan to fly. And I remember someone once said, I think it was Leonardo da Vinci, that once a person sees something flying in the sky, they will look up into the air for the rest of their life. And a person who is truly a pilot, they have a pilot's instinct, as we say, a pilot's instinct. In aviation, there are no people who just suddenly end up there. There are people who are pilots, but they don't have that true pilot's instinct. But when you have it, you constantly want to. When you fly, you want to keep flying. I want to fly, but I want to fly beautiful flights. That means you're not thinking that someone will shoot you down now or that someone wants to destroy you. I truly want to fly many beautiful and exhilarating flights in truly beautiful and captivating places, to see the entire world, and to fly purely for my own personal pleasure, always returning safely to my loving and supportive family. And that's right.
If you were an advisor to the president, what would you advise him?
If I were an advisor to the president, I would be on issues of aviation development. As someone who has directly carried out and continues to carry out combat missions, I would advise on what would be most effective, first and foremost, not on something where I might have a personal stake, because unfortunately, when something is done here, even during the war, it's done under the condition of what's in it for me. At the highest levels, when you are making important decisions, I would always advise focusing on achieving the best possible results. Today, we all must work for results, and the results should be the top priority. But when it comes to Army aviation, to the development of aviation helicopters, I understand these things. That's what I would advise there.
What do you think everyone should do at least once in their life?
Actually, true happiness, in my personal opinion, is something quite different and unique for everyone. Just like love, I truly think, is also something profoundly different and deeply personal for absolutely everyone. If a person genuinely does what truly makes them happy and brings them immense joy, and at the very same time doesn't cause any harm or distress to those around them, then that's just absolutely super and wonderfully fantastic. I am genuinely so happy and incredibly pleased for that wonderful person.